Hey everyone, welcome to the Palikari Business Podcast. My name is Abby.
And I'm Nick.
And we're the founders of Odyssey Productions Co., a video production company located in the Central Valley of California.
Yeah, the word Palikari is a Greek word that means a young person who's achieved great things beyond their years.
So in each episode of this podcast, we will be interviewing successful business owners, influencers, and entrepreneurs to learn from their wisdom, experiences, and even their mistakes in hopes of helping you achieve great things beyond your years.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the episode.
So Tyler Combs works in a regional sales role in the textile industry. He's a 10 times Elite Sales Award winner, as well as a 3-time President Club achiever.
Yeah, and I've known him my whole life, and he's a great guy, and we're super excited to have him here. I think that's the first compliment I've ever given you. That felt kind of weird.
Yeah, that was a little weird, yeah. Oh, my.
All right, so we want to talk about sales with you today, but just before we start doing that, just so people can get to know you a little bit, would you mind sharing maybe a little bit of your background or just a little bit about yourself?
Professional background or personal?
Either way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first
Little
compliment I've
both.
ever gotten from Nick Hammond, so hey, I'm already doing something right. I grew up in the Valley here, married, have 3 kids. They're 9, 6, and 3. They'll be 10, 7, and 4 in the next few months. I didn't always work in sales. I worked in a couple of hybrid roles, but I've gotten into sales in maybe the last 4 years, and it just comes naturally to me. But part of it's just kind of a mindset thing, right? So the way you think and the way you see and the way you interact with people there's some natural talent there, but there's also some of it that's, you just have to think a little bit differently than normal people, for lack of a better term. So, really enjoy it and enjoy the Valley. Get to sit here in Oakdale, California. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
Cool.
Cool.
Is that enough of a background for you?
Yeah, that's
I
perfect.
could go on and on, but I would hate to do that. So,
No,
that's
that's perfect. So can you teach us kind of what you, when we met with you personally, can you also kind of give an overview here of how you conduct sales and sort of the similar thing that you taught us?
Yeah, so you kind of walked us through how you would sell something versus how most people would try to sell something like.
Okay, so if you have a product that you're, I think we had talked about this. So there's certain product lines or certain industries that there's a lot of competition. If you work in a really competitive market, then the product becomes far less important than the actual person selling it or the service that comes with it, right? If you're selling in a competitive market, kind of like you guys are in with media, social media, advertisement, there's only so many things you can do, right? So you've forgotten more than I've ever learned about that particular, that part of the industry. But at the end of the day, you don't really have anything discernible to a layman to offer that everybody else doesn't, or at least can't sell well, right? So they have all these fancy terms and all this other stuff. So you have to kind of reference it earlier. You have to think differently. And how do you approach the customer? How do you approach the sale? How do you approach what their needs are? When people first get into sales, or people who are inexperienced, or people who just flat out aren't good at it, the focus is always on the product, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a reality to the idea that you need to have a focus on the product. They need to know what you're selling. You state your intentions well. You get a meeting, especially if it's a big one, you want to make sure that they know what your objectives are, make sure they know what your goals are in order, in the construct of that meeting, but also you need to know more about their business than the average person. So that's always step one, right? So if you're going to meet with a manufacturer of almonds, then do some research on the front end of that, right? So you're not walking in asking them how the whole program works. It's always good I think I told you guys this when we met, everyone's favorite subject is themselves, right? But if you can ask intelligible questions, it usually opens up the floodgates of a bunch of, if they're not having to explain to you how they hold almonds. If they don't have to explain to you the basics of it and they feel like you have somewhat of an understanding, then they tend to open up quite a bit more, right? So as far as like the sales, when we're coming into a meeting, especially if it's, generally speaking, if you're coming into a meeting and it's a large opportunity is what we call it, right? So for you guys, it would be like a huge deal, like a multi-year deal, or something that you're going to make a bunch of money off of over the next 5 years, or something like that. You want to enter into that meeting getting to know each other. in our industry, typically, whenever I've trained people or coached people, I always tell them like one of the last things that you should reference is the actual product, because again, everyone's favorite subject is themselves. But also, you get to know people help you sell without realizing it because of the fact that their favorite subject is themselves. They're more than willing to give you more information as time goes on, right? So if we were meeting, I'll just use a almond hulling company, right? So if you have a little bit of research on the front end, just having an idea of what certain phraseology is or what terminology that they use, you can ask them educated questions based on what you know about their industry. You can tell them, I've heard that there's a 103C machine that just came out. Are you guys using that in this area? Like, is that something that you've been able to do, or is that something that's beneficial in the Central Valley, right? But what it does is you get to talking about that because and again, this is all contextual, right? So sometimes people don't want to talk that much, so you have to be smart enough to know, read the room, know who you're dealing with. But for this, dynamic or this example, I'll just use that. So, oh no, we haven't used that because this, that, and the other, or we're still working on, in our industry, as happens all the time, we'll ask them a question and they'll say, oh, well, we're going to push that off to 2023. Oh, well, why are you doing that? Oh, because we're going to expand into, 2 other buildings that they're in process right now. They're across the street. Well, all of a sudden, I now know that, like, I came in there to sell them product X, and this is a much older, smaller building, right? But they're building a state-of-the-art building, 2 of them across the street. I would have never found that out if I hadn't asked those types of questions, right? So being able to engage them in a personal level and talk more about what they have to offer, what they're doing, and what their process looks like. Being able to do that, even in the construct of just thinking that it's this, or for you guys, it's just a wedding video, or it's just, I know Nick hates those things, or it's just a promo, a 30-second spot, or whatever it is. Asking those questions before you even get to telling them how you're going to do the 30-second spot, that you might find out that they're ready to, expand from, product X to X, Y, Z, and A. But you wouldn't have known that if you had just gone into your sales pitch, because they bring you in there assuming that you're only there to sell a product, right? And that's where when the 3 of us had talked, or my wife was there too, the 4 of us, when you transition from a salesperson or a vendor to a partner, people are far more willing to share their lives, and you find out a ton about people, and not that there's always got to be a means to an end, right? But there is a reality that people will buy something from someone that they feel like that they've gotten to know far more quickly, and that's not terrible English, but they're willing to partner with people on much larger projects that they feel comfortable with in the long term, and so that's kind of how we approach, or at least how I approach it. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
I'm not 100% sure if I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very small encapsulating of what we're, that's just one small example. But I guess that if you wanted to overarch the entire idea is that if you want to be a great salesperson, or in my opinion, a great business owner, people have to know that you know who they are, so that you can pitch them correctly, or that you can give them only what they need and not more than what they need.
Yeah.
So
Do your homework.
Yeah.
Before going in.
Yeah, and just knowing how to ask the right questions, and just letting them talk about themselves. Generally, on a a larger, just to use a larger opportunity more. The more you know about them, the less pitfalls that you're likely to run into, because people love to talk about, oh yeah, well, we had this terrible situation. It may have absolutely nothing to do with what you're talking about, but it may give you context of, someone really, kind of screwed them over on something, and you can keep that in the back of your mind. So if they start talking about something that even flirts with that line, or is that even in that same subject, you have a context of like, well, listen, Nick, I know you went through this whole thing with this camera manufacturer, right? And I know that kind of stuff is tough. And so what we'll do is, as we're entering into this, if you need to buy any, additional equipment, I'll make sure that, if you'd like, I can take care of that for you, so that you don't end up paying for what you don't need, right? So that we can get you that stuff if you want to do it in-house. It's being able to head off objections or concerns before they even exist, and you can already take care of that. So, when they come down to, the owner talks to his wife or a CFO or whoever it is, and and they say, well, you remember, oh no, Nick and Abby said that they would take care of that already. Like, we'll just have them tell us what we need, and you've already solved the problem before it became one, because someone's going to bring it up at some point, right? So that's a really long way to answer that question, but there you go.
So
that was good.
It's building that trust through being relational and asking the right questions, so
Right.
that then they come to you with those problems before, like you said, before they become a big problem, because they can trust you.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
What if you do fall into like a pitfall kind of thing, or even there's just something awkward that comes up, like, oh, well, we don't really need what you're selling because of this. How do you combat that?
Well, I guess it would just depend on the scenario. So, and if we're taking it in context of, like, say, for instance, in your industry, like, well, we really don't need that. That's a really tough one, because there's so many branches to that.
Yeah.
One of the things I can tell you just from experience is to not. You have to be really clever about how you push through that. So if you know they need it and they don't know they need it, or you don't know what their motivation is, right? So I'll try and answer this one in a shorter way. So if they don't say they need something, you don't want to push it. Well, like, I think you really do need that thing, or I think this is the way the industry standard. That it always comes back down to questions. Well, fair enough. So what is and I use this all the time. So what is it that, because I do this a lot, I want to know what your thought is on it. So we'll table that discussion, but before we do, I just would love to hear why that you don't think that's important, or what that thing means to you, or just so that I can have more of a demographic, some more data so that I don't waste anybody else's time. I'm sorry I wasted yours, essentially, but what is that part of it? And it almost always, and your industry may be a little bit different, it's almost always costs, or it's perceived workload, right? So if we're going to completely change a program within a manufacturing facility, or do all this other stuff, and they've had a vendor for a really long time, their perception of it is that, like, they love what we're pitching, they love the intro costs, they love all these other things, but they assume that they're going to have some sort of dynamic part in making this thing work, or it's going to be a huge cost. And those are usually, in our industry, the first two things that come up. Well, we just don't have the workforce right now. We're already in the middle of a program. We just don't have time to deal with this. And usually my answer is, like, listen, if that's your only thing, with your permission, it's no big deal one way or the other what we do. But what I will say is that, like, if you're okay with it, I would love to be able to give you what you just asked for, but also include these other things, and then give you a breakdown of what that actually means to you on a logistical level. Because if you give me the green light, we'll take care of everything that you're concerned about, and then we can talk about costs and see if it makes sense. We can kind of finagle a little bit and see what makes sense for you guys. But a lot of times when people say no to things, especially if they're obviously the industry standard, or something that they probably really do need, them knowing that it doesn't have a huge impact on them it usually makes it a fair amount of difference. But just asking the right questions in the right way. So if you're telling me if I'm getting married, and you guys think that the video thing is going to be really good, but you're also doing photography. If you're looking at me and I'm like, I just don't think the video is necessary. It's not important to us. Well, that's totally fine, because we have to do this a lot. Would you mind, just real quick? I won't waste much more of your time. I just would love to know what the pitfalls for you are. What is not valuable to that? Because if it ends up not being valuable in this demographic or in this area, then I don't want to continue to either pitch it or waste money or time doing it. So what is it that turns you off of that? Well, Nick, honestly, I don't really want to spend the extra cost or whatever. And so, there's multiple packages, or the way that we can, provide that. If it's a drone shot, we can drop some of every 45 people in your family, take 6 less pictures. We can probably do this drone shot, and you can have the best of both worlds. So asking what their issue with it is, instead of just either fighting for the sale and irritating them, or just walking away from it. No is not always no. It's just not yet, or sometimes it's just they saying no because they don't want to deal with it. So that's kind of a really broad stroke answer for that, but we do run into that quite a bit. So.
No,
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
That's helpful to not just keep just buy it. Just buy it. That's not how.
What's wrong with you?
Check the office. Do it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Buy it. And that's
Exactly.
it really is though, because people don't, unless it's rare that if you're an industry professional that you're offering something, it's rare that it actually doesn't make sense. It usually has to do, in my experience, with either cost or effort. So if they're working on a budget, well then let me work up 2 or 3 different proposals with you where you can have the best of both worlds. Like I was proposing X, Y, and Z, assuming you were going to do A, B, and C. But if you don't want to pay for all 6, we can reduce, Z and Y and add to B and C. We don't have to. It's not a package deal. And a lot of people in their head, especially in your industry, I mean, I'm only 38 years old, and so I don't understand half of it. So if you're dealing with a business owner or people who are not as technologically savvy as you guys are, a lot of times they think that it's either all or nothing, and you can really cater to them by asking the right questions and saying, hey, listen, if you really like the whole idea of like a flyover, but you think you have to do the video, the rest of it, I just want to make sure you understand, like we can fix some of the costs here and add this in, and your overall cost would be negligibly different. Like it would be the same. And so knowing how to sell people and figuring out what the ticks are, what did they talk about? What did they reference? Like, well, I'd really like that overhead shot, but the video just doesn't seem like it's worth it. Well, you had talked about doing, all these shots here. Is there any of those that aren't as important? If you love that idea, I want to give you what you want, not necessarily what you think you have to get based on what I just presented. This is just stage 1, right? This is just step 1. So that's the whole concept of it. So
Okay, so can you talk about, if you're comfortable, maybe some of the biggest mistakes you've made or have seen people make when it comes to sales?
Oh, geez. Everything's just so contextual. I'm not trying to be more epic than it needs to be. So the biggest mistake I've ever made. Oh, goodness. I mean, it's not a lack of comfort. It really just depends on the context. I guess one of the things that I would, it's not necessarily in sales. Maybe it's more in the arena of once you've made the sale or once you're towards the end, is assumption is the mother of all screw-ups. Don't ever assume that you understand what they're saying. Even if your client or your customer is there's a lot of those people that are a little on the short side. They don't want to mess with it, but knowing how to phrase it correctly, like they're being a little ambiguous. Don't ever guess, right? So especially in the creative market like you guys are in, you can't let people's lack of patience become your lack of credibility, right? So people are going to want to push it through because they've got a lot of stuff going on. But knowing how to phrase it and say, listen, I don't want to waste your time and I don't want to use more of your time, but I also can't afford to waste a bunch of mine doing it incorrectly. So there's a couple of clarifications I need, right? So what you're saying to me is that you want this, and this. But those 3 things don't vibe, and a lot of times people, well, if you can get them to slow down long enough, they'll understand that either they're being unclear or you just don't understand, which is totally fine. So that's one of the bigger mistakes. And then a lot of people don't always relate the 2 things between sales and commitments, right? So when you commit to do a thing at a certain time, you got to do it. Like, I don't care if you have to not go to your grandma's birthday party, especially when you're first starting out. And that comes down to knowing what you're capable of and knowing what can be done in a certain amount of time. And your credibility is almost irreparably damaged if you can't come through on it. Even if they say it's okay, it doesn't matter. You come through. If you say you're going to do a thing by May 1st, if it's not done by May 1st, unless something catastrophic happens, building burns down or something, people honor timelines, especially people my age and older. Like, if you tell me you're going to do a thing and you don't do it, I'll probably forgive you, but there'll be a time where if I get into a pinch and need it done and my boss tells me it's got to be done by Friday, you better believe that's going to enter into our mind, whether or not you can actually do it. Because you said you could the first time and you were a day late. Yeah. And not that no one, I don't believe anyone reasonable expects perfection, but if something comes up, then being very clear, like, listen, this is what happened, or my laptop, took a dump, whatever it is, I'm unable to do this, or I don't know if it's going to happen. And it just being really clear and really honest. And a lot of times those are really tough conversations because they'll say exactly what I just did, Well, you said it'd be done by Friday, so figure it out. But the forgiveness comes in the process, not in so much, getting to the end of it and failing someone. So just making sure that you don't allow. I tell the guys who work with me and for me under the mentorship program, like, we can't allow customers, within reason, you can't allow the customers' timelines and needs dictate what you're going to do, because you know what you're doing more than you've forgotten more about what you do than they'll ever learn, right? So you can't, we have to be willing to say that's not realistic, or that's, I can try, but I'm going to tell you I'll try for Friday, but I promise you it'll be done Tuesday. And that's the thing, is especially when you're really excited about a sale, or like you get this big account, you're super excited, and you'll probably sell your grandma to get that account. That's a term I use all the time. But seriously, like, we get excited, especially when you're young, or when this is really dangerous, when you need the money. You'll make a commitment that you can't fulfill, or that you don't know that you can fulfill. It's an old cliche, but always under promise and over deliver. You know what? If Nick says I can probably get that done by Friday, tell him Monday. If it's done by Friday, then they're like, you're the hero. If it's done by Tuesday and you said Monday, then you're screwed, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be that person. And so just knowing what you're capable of, but also knowing that people don't have any grid for what could possibly go wrong, like on him, the technical side of it, right? Mm-hmm. Dude, I don't even know. Like, I've done some of it, but there's things that can go wrong. Or that there's situations, or maybe they didn't give you all the information and you don't figure it out until Thursday before. Giving yourself an extra buffer and just being able to commit. There's a difference between a goal and a commitment, right? So this is a sales thing, but if your goal is to sell $10,000 in a quarter, that's a great goal. But what are you going to promise me you're going to get? So our commitment levels, our goal is, you want to shoot for the stars. If you don't get there, fine. But if you miss your commitment level, then you've failed, right? So if you think you can get 10, but you know you can get 7, commit to 7, go for 10. Mm-hmm. But your baseline has to be your baseline is your integrity. So, and your character. So when you say you're going to do a thing, not just in sales, but just running a business, you have to be the person that never can, that if it's possible to never come in under that mark. Mm-hmm. So that would be. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's really good. Hey guys, if you found this podcast to be helpful to you, we would love to invite you to join our community Discord server. In the server, you'll be able to discuss the things you've been learning with other entrepreneurs, ask questions, build connections with like-minded people, and you'll have direct access to Nick and I.
Yeah, and the best part is it's totally free. We would love to connect with you. So if you're interested in joining our awesome community, head over to our Instagram page at Odyssey Productions Co. and click that link in our bio.
We can't wait to talk with you.
How do you handle getting from the person at the front desk to the actual decision maker?
I guess for certain industries, there's, if you're dealing with like a business that has like a HACCP protocol or an OSHA protocol, it's an unsafe environment, or it's a food service environment. That becomes a lot more difficult because you have to be approved, and there's an approval process. I think one of the things that you have to remember, whether it's a dentist office or it's Diamond Foods or Sconza Candy, right? You have to remember that those people were put there not just to answer phones. They're there to screen people exactly like you, right?
Yeah.
So, generally speaking, like our outside reps they have to be a little bit more clever than I do, because I deal with mostly our existing customers. So I am able to get internal names, all that stuff. I'm able to get a little bit more information. But generally speaking, if you can you need to find out who that you're looking for. Walk in and say, hey, this is going to sound super shady, but like, we were just here a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember the name of the person that they said was in charge of the social media account or whatever. I'm trying to remember. I just stopped by because I was driving by. What is that person's name? Oh, it's Nick Hammond. Yeah. Awesome. Know what? I think I might have his contact info. So then you call and you say, hey, this is Abby. I almost said Goodman. Abby Hammond. This is that. Sorry, old habits. But you say, hey, this is Abby Goodman. I'm calling for Nick Hammond. And it's like, oh, what's this regarding? Oh, I had some questions about him regarding the ad campaign or whatever. Mm-hmm. You don't ever ask permission to speak to somebody. You tell the person that does, because we call them gatekeepers. Mm-hmm. It's a learned art, but when you ask like who's in charge of the social media, you're immediately a salesperson, right? But if you call and ask to talk to Nick, and they say, well, who's calling? This is Abby from Odyssey Productions. I just wanted to touch base with them about some of the ad campaigning for this next year, that they have planned or that they may be looking into for the next year. It depends on how good the gatekeeper is, but that's usually going to get you past the average $15 or $18 employee an hour. And then this is the most important part. So, if I call and Nick answers the phone, and Nick says hello, hey Nick, how you doing? Good. Who's this? Oh, this is Tyler from Odyssey Productions. How's your day going, man? Good. I'm sorry, have we met? And hey, oh, you know what? I've come by a couple times to get in contact with you. I had some stuff I wanted you to look at, but I don't want to come in at the wrong time. So do you have a day that it works better for you? Do you have an admin day or something like that? You don't even address the fact that you've never met the man. Because most people, I know, it's where it always sounds shady. Most people are like, oh my God, I don't even know who the crap I'm talking to right now. But they will actually, most of the time, meet with you. And for the first third of that meeting, they're going to be trying to figure out how come they can't remember you. Yeah. It works. I'm telling you, it sounds super shady. Again, it's a learned art. But confidence is half the battle, and part of it is just introing with talking to Nick like you know him. Mm-hmm. It really does work. People are like, hi. I've done it more than once. I'm like, hey, John, how's it going? Good. Who's this? I was like, it's Tyler from UniFirst. Oh, how's it going, man? Oh. But the thing is, it really does work. I'm like, hey, man, I was working on some stuff, and I need to come and look at the facility before we can give you any sort of idea of what we can do better. But I want to honor your time. I want to make sure that I don't come in here unannounced or waste your time or any of your staff's time. Even if I don't meet with you, that's fine. If you got one of your subordinates that wants to connect with me, that's totally cool. Just give me a day and a time. I have some appointments open on Tuesday between 11 and 1 or Thursday or Friday between 8 to 2 or whatever. Make up a number. Because at this point, you're probably going to have all that time open, but you're going to want to put them on the deadline, right? Yeah. 90% of the time, it's going to work. 10% of the time, you didn't lose anything. But if you approach it that way, this person's trying to figure out how come they don't know you, what time is going to work for them, and if they are going to do it or if they're going to push you off on someone else. Yeah. But then the same concept works because you get in there, one of their subordinates, he probably told them, Abby, I have no idea who this person coming is. I think I might be supposed to know who this person is, so just see what they want. And just talk like you own the place. It works. It really does. And I've sold things that to people I've never even met. Just talk to them on email. Because I'll go in there and do that, and we'll talk about stuff. And usually if you can get past the person actually making the decision and the people actually doing the thing or that are responsible for that thing. So if you get into a real estate company, or the real estate owner or insurance company, the actual owner, they're the decision maker, right? But they don't actually make any of the decisions. They're just the one that signs off on it. So it's getting to the right person, getting permission, and backing into finding that sweet spot of the person who you could give them all that stuff, and a person who's 1 or 2 levels down is probably gonna be like, that's awesome. Now you have 2 salespeople in that building instead of 1. You have yourself that they can ask you questions, and they can go to the person they already have a relationship with that you pretended to have a relationship with, and actually have that conversation and be like, hey, Abby, you know what? This actually might be pretty rad. You should take a look at it. And that's called going around the obstacle, right? So people run into salespeople, small business owners, we run into walls, and they just give up. So they instead of trying to figure out how to create a way around it, they just hit 50 walls a week and maybe get 1 a month or 2 a month, right? But if you hit one, I'm not saying waste a bunch of your time, but if you just, like I said in the very beginning, if you just shift your thinking, it's not just about selling, it's about making these people get to know you even if they don't want to or they don't know that you're absolutely you're friend zoning them they don't even know. So, that's kind of the whole does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. That's great.
It's not going to be a one size fits all, obviously, but
those are some good.
Yeah, understanding that person in the front has I would say, if not 100% of the time, it's 99% of the time. That person that is going to stop you at the gate is not just there to stop you at the gate, but they also have 0 decision making ability, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So taking that approach or whatever approach you do, hey, listen. You know what? I was just there this last week, or you can go in there and get pushed out and then call the next day. I was just in there earlier this week, and I I'm sorry I misplaced the card, Danielle, but I was talking about the person who does the social media or the advertising, like I said before, like, what's that guy's name? I don't need you to give me his number or anything, but what was that guy's name again? Oh, it's, John Smith. Cool, thank you so much. Now I remember. And you just hang up the phone. And then you call back next week. Hey, is John there?
Yeah.
Dude, I know it sounds like a bunch of like fodder, but I'm telling you, it works all the time. Like, people are like, yeah, who's this? Oh, it's Nick. Oh yeah, Nick, hold on one second. And we don't have a camera in there, but they're probably like, who the crap is Nick, dude? Like,
Yeah.
But you don't, and it's not, oh, this is Nick from Odyssey Explained, blah, 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 blah. No, click. He's like, hi, this is Nick Hammond. Oh, hey, Nick, what's it regarding? Oh, I had some information for him for some of the things we were looking into for you guys. That person is not authorized to not give him that phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why? Because the receptionist now has no idea what you're talking about. They know you know their name. And if for some reason that person was actually looking for that information and they didn't let you through, then their butt's on the line. And people are always most invested in taking care of themselves. Mm-hmm. So that person's like, whatever, let him figure it out. Transfer the call. So that's kind of the whole concept behind it. So
Yeah, being clever and creative and
yeah, and I mean, it's to people who don't do it or have never done it. It feels a little shady, but it really just doesn't. It doesn't come off that way. And people, I've had customers be like, "How did you get this meeting?" I'm like, "I just called and asked for you." He's like, "Did you tell him who you were?" So yeah, I told him I was Tyler. He goes, "Nice." He's like, "Well, all right." He's like, "Well, apparently you're a big deal." I was like, "I think so. Just tell my wife if you could, please. Just let her know I'm a big deal." So anyway, that's the answer to that question.
Yeah, that was really good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and then. It sounds shady, but it's not, because then when you're actually in the meeting, you're not being manipulative. You're actually being very relational and trying to learn about them to help them out. So that's really cool. I like that.
Well, sales is manipulation. People don't like that, especially if you come from like the church or other places. Like, sales is nothing short of manipulation. You have to manipulate the situation in order to get enough of a conversation going to actually be able to explain the product to it. So you do have to manipulate the situation. That gets a bad rap, and in some ways it is very bad, like some forms or fashion of manipulation. But sales and owning your own business is not for the faint of heart, and it's not for the nice guy. Like, it's not to say you can't be nice, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to be willing to like for lack of a better term, kind of finagle your way into places, because there's just flat out places you'll never get into. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can tell you a story of something that happened just a couple of weeks ago. It took me 2.5 years to get in there. I finally just walked in there and be like, "Hey, where's Robert?" They're like, "Oh, his office down there. Who are you?" I'm like, "I'm Tyler. I work for Universe." "Oh yeah, I think he's just got off the phone." I tried to get in there for 2 years doing it the right way. I'm like, whatever, dude. I walked in there, huge sale, and biggest by far. All I did was just walk in. I'm like, "Where's Robert?" And they're like, apparently I look like I knew what I was doing, but I had never met this dude in real life. And we had emailed back and forth. I'm like, "Hey man, I was just in the neighborhood. I just want to come by and say hi." He goes, "Dude, yeah, I forgot to answer you." I was like, "Hey, don't worry, man. Do you want me to go?" He's like, "Sit down. Let's talk." But that's the thing, is like, confidence is half of it, but I manipulated, and I know it sounds like a cuss word to kids who grew up in church, right? But it does. And there's some people who suck and they're manipulative and they should go away. But sales is a form of manipulation, that you have to manipulate the situation. You don't have to manipulate people, because as long as you're not doing anything unethical or incorrect, or just things that aren't doing it the right way, it's not a bad thing. You just have to be willing to manipulate this scenario long enough to get into that person and then open up, like you said, get to know them, and then just tell them who you are, what you're doing, and
that makes a lot of sense. That's really good.
It's a cuss word in the church, so
It
manipulate.
is.
Manipulation.
Get away, manipulator, Jezebel. So.
Okay, so kind of on that note, how do you have any tips, I guess, along this line of how do you identify the right kinds of potential customers or clients? Like, because obviously there's people you don't want to go after for whatever reason. So how do you identify who would be the right person to try and make your sale to?
I run into that a lot when I train some of our people. Like, they wanted 20% off, and I'm just worried it's going to set a bad precedent. I'm like, what precedent is that? Because we've got our markup percentage, but we've got room to move. And it was just a few weeks ago where I said, well, they wanted on this product, they wanted this, 20% less. And so I just told them, continue to get from your own supplier. I said, well, why? He said, because there's 6 businesses in this building, and they all want to buy the gloves. So you're telling me you walked away from 6 potential sales over 20%? I said, let's say it was 40%. You still made 135% more than you would have if you sold all 6. So it's all contextual, right? So obviously, like someone who just wants you to do a $4,000 job for $250, like, yeah, you walk away from those people. They're just, they're either pretending they have money or they're just so far off planet Earth that it would just be a waste of time to deal with them. But there is a flip side to that coin where, and I guess for me, when we've made deals for those types of customers, I have no problem telling them, like, listen, I understand that you want that. I can go to my boss, or I can talk to my wife. We can see if that can work for us. But if we're going to do that and give you a discount on this, I need you to commit. And there's really no way to hold them to it, right? But I need you to, like, if you're going to do that, if I'm going to do that for you, can you commit to me that in the next 6 months you'll give me at least 5 references? I'll do that for 5 references, because $200, it's basically like a rebate card. Or, if they ask you for a couple $100 off, but knowing how to make people, like, and you guys, I assume you guys have like service contracts or a work order contract that you guys enter into with people, and like, if in the next, it's going to take us 30, we have 30 or 45 days. Like, I'm not asking you to make these people use this, but I would like to know that, I will give you $250 off at the end of this if I get 5 phone calls. Even if I can't sell them, that's not your fault if I can't sell them, or if we're not what they're looking for. But putting the onus back on other people and saying, listen, you want a deal, I'll give you a deal, but I need something back. And a lot of people get either offended by the fact that they want a deal, or they just will do it because they're afraid of losing the sale. But in my experience, like I said, I'm almost 39 years old. Not much comes for free in this world. So if you want like a rebate, like you go to the gym, if you send them a referral, they give you $50. They don't give you just $50 for the honor of signing up at the gym. Like, they're not afraid if you don't sign up, someone else won't. So knowing how to work people into that kind of thing is just, again, it's thinking around the problem within reason. Like you said, I mean, I agree with you. If someone's just being ridiculous, like, I'm good, man. Thanks for the call. Goodbye. Bye, Felicia. Now I don't remember what the question was. I'm sorry, I derailed this.
It was like, how do you target the correct?
Yeah, so I guess it really depends on the business. So I mean, in the context of what you guys are doing or what I do, they're going to be very different. If someone were to be listening to this and they were trying to start a particular business, target what you can do well, and make that 80% of your targets. So whatever you can do really, really well and really quickly, make that at least maybe it's 3/4 of what you're doing, and just target that demographic. And then spend the other 25% of the time whale hunting, right? So find 4 or 5 that you're not even sure you can get, but the worst thing you're going to get is a no, right? But knowing how to split up to where you keep an even revenue stream, but also not just finding yourself, the nitpickers 10 years from now and just doing doing 20% of what you could have, so you can learn on the big ones and keep your bills paid with the smaller ones. For your industry, I mean, it really just depends on what kind of work you want to do. But I think we had talked about this before. Like, if you can find a group of 50 potential clients that you want to target, start doing research on them. If it's a larger facility, founders, CEOs, plant managers, stuff like that is usually pretty public. Like, they'll post it like Nick Hammond, production manager, Sconza Candy, right? There's going to be information you can find out just by looking them up, and then you can take the notes and then do targeted call blocks and say, hey, this, and again use that same concept, like, hey, this is Nick Hammond, Odyssey Productions. We're just down the street. I was there just the other day, and I wasn't able to catch you. I had a couple of things for you. Are you going to be there on Tuesday? I just drop it off, and I won't waste a bunch of your time. And start doing your own version of like a cold call block. But those are going to be for the ones that you're going to want to whale hunt, and then the other one is just marketing yourselves really well. So, and that's not the only way to do it, but I usually tell people, especially in our industry, like, keep your baseline going, because there's going to be times where it dries up and you have time to work on the bigger ones. And there's going to be times where that 80% turns into 120% of your capacity, and those big ones have to sit, but at least you can flux one way or the other.
So for our very last question, when we were meeting with you, I think you tried to sell us a Tootsie Roll or a pen or something. Could you
I didn't try. You tried to sell me a Tootsie Roll.
Yeah, and then you showed me how I was wrong. But do you think you
You weren't
could?
wrong. Well, yeah, you were.
I was, yeah.
No, you did exactly what everybody else does.
Yeah.
Everybody does, right?
So could you
Can
kind
you
of
explain then what everybody else does?
pretend
and-
you're selling us something and I don't know.
Well, I understand I understand your question. Like, would it be? Well, because you already know now. It's so the concept. I guess I'll explain the concept and then I'll do it. So, the idea is if you're selling a bottle of water, right? I think you're right. I think it was a Tootsie Roll. So, especially when you're new in sales or you're really like you need to make money to live. I'm sure you understand. This is that. I'm gonna use a dumb example, but you remember the movie Tommy Boy where he's like, "My precious," like, "Oh, look at this precious thing." Like, we get so involved early on in sales, early on in owning a business that we're so concerned about our product, we forgot we're speaking to a person, right? So, in your industry is very similar to mine, and only in a couple ways, but one of the ways is that there are many, many people who do what we do, right? So, the problem is if we're selling the water bottle. This happens to be a Kirkland one. You can go get an Arrowhead one or a Crystal Geyser, or you can go get one from the 7-Eleven, or you can. Right? What's the point? The point is that you can buy a bottle of water anywhere. The second mistake people make is that they go straight to cost, right? So let's just assume that person X has gotten past the idea of my precious thing, so they understand that there's other water bottles. Well, if you're selling Kirkland water bottles, you're like, the second default method is that, well, you get 40 of these for $3.56, and that's XYZ. That's I think it's what is it, 0.06? It's a half a cent per ounce, blah blah blah, and they go into the cost analysis, right? Well, so you've either caught one of two problems there. Either number one, the customer is either too dumb or too disinterested to care what the cost per ounce is, or they're smarter than you and they understand that yes, yours is this way, but the cost of the blah blah blah. You get those bean counters, those purchasers, those buyers. They understand. They've forgotten more about you or what you're talking about than you've ever learned, and then you lose them because you were selling it on that thing, right? So. What we had talked about when we were at my house is that when we Abby, I think Abby did better than Nick, but Nick also had which is embarrassing because Nick got to go second. He still did worse.
What? You didn't even say anything.
I didn't sell anything. I
no,
knew
you didn't.
I knew the
didn't.
direction I needed to go, but I didn't know how to get there.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's the application of wisdom.
Yeah.
Of knowledge is wisdom. But yeah, it was just for the record, it was embarrassing because Nick watched her struggle and still failed worse. You could cut that out of the podcast.
I want to leave that in. I'm editing, so.
No, so the whole idea is that what we had talked about after you guys had both gone is so we use a Tootsie Roll, use a water bottle. So you meet with a customer, you meet with a potential client, you say, they know what you're there to sell with. So you don't really need to talk about a water bottle. If you're a water salesman, they're going to assume, like anyone who's not a moron is going to assume that you're there to sell water bottles, right? So the water bottle is going to be the last portion of it, not the first, which is, like I said, it's always a mistake, either cost or product, right? I usually will intro and talk a little bit about myself. I've been, we get into a conversation and, what's your position here? Oh, I'm this, that, and the other. Oh, that's neat. Let me tell you a little bit. They'll talk you because, like I said earlier, everyone's favorite subject is himself. And I'll usually give them a brief synopsis of what I've done, what my history is. This is what I do. This is my role in our job. There's lots of people who do what I do, but the unique part is I'm not just here to give you extra things. I'm here to make sure that what we are either currently doing or what we're going to do makes sense, but we're also not doing anything that doesn't make sense, right? So what did you just do? Forget, they don't even care about the water bottle now. What did you just become? You became a person that is going to help them make sure everything is running smoothly and just so happens to have water bottles with them, right? So the prong to that is that looking at the way you sell the water bottle is not about price, it's not about service, it's about you. Especially for a business like yours or small businesses that are trying to get up and going, is that the only difference between you and the other video places, there may be technical differences, there may be equipment like these awesome mics or whatever.
Yeah.
The only real difference though, because honestly, if you were selling me on doing a promo video, I don't know the difference between this and one step down. This could be a crappy mic, it just looks nice, right? But what's the difference? The difference is Nick, the difference is Abby, right? So you you have to be able to sell yourself far better than you do your product, far more effectively than you do any service that you provide, far more convincingly than you could possibly ever explain to them the nuance of how to edit and what color correction looks like and what this, that, and the other. Like, people don't care about that stuff. They don't care how the water bottle is made. They don't care what the cap is made out of. They don't even care where the water came from. They just care that at some level, if you've done an effective job, you sell them on, I promise you this, if you buy our water bottles, and then that's where you transition to it. You tell them about you tell them about the services you provide and how you go about getting them the product and the services. No matter what happens, I promise you this, that within the realm of reason, if we fail or if there's any issue or if there's any product problems or logistical chain, I not only will stay in contact with you, but I will work on a Saturday or Sunday to get you your water bottles if that's what you need. We're not going to let you run out, and that's because I'm invested in you, not just because I want your sale, because I only get paid for so long off of a sale, but what I'm invested in is that if I'm your partner and you're successful, then I'm successful, not only now, but later on down the road. If you grow, we grow, right? So if we build a interpersonal relationship and a business relationship, if you're double the size you were last year, you're going to need twice the things that you had last year, right? Yeah. So that's the idea is to become their business partner. But that's the thing. So you've sold them on the product, you sold them on the logistic, you sold them on you, but also how we close a lot of deals and how we get people invested in doing long-term business with us is things like this. Like, just keep in mind when you do this, I want to make sure wherever you're stored, is it hot or is it cold? Oh yeah, no, we put them out in the shed and there's no temperature control out there. Well, here's the deal. Then we may need to reduce down how much you get at a time, because this is stage 3 plastic, right? So anything with a 2 or higher, if it's in the heat too long, it actually can, the contaminants in the recycled plastic can actually contaminate the water. So what we don't want to do is give you a bunch of it like you're used to getting, because we'll do it weekly if we have to. What we don't want to do is give you water that's contaminated, right? So what we can do, what did you just do? You just became their partner. They're either going to move that water or buy it from you weekly now, because you just told them that what they probably planned on doing was going to be a problem, right? Mm-hmm. You are no longer a salesperson. You are no longer someone pitching something. You just made sure that they not only know who you are, they know, you know who they are as well. You've got the product, you've got the knowledge, but you also just saved them from a world of hurt. And so you are now their business consultant. And when you become that to a person, whether it's in your industry or ours, I get calls all the time. I got one on the way here that they're asking me a question. I don't have any earthly idea what the answer is, but they called me instead of the person that probably they should have called, but because they know that I will give them an answer, or I'll call you back with an answer, right? Yeah. When you become that person to somebody, there's not only for long-term business needs, but that kind of reference, you couldn't buy that from an ad agency. Not a chance. Because people's words are the most powerful thing. When word of mouth, especially in a culture like this, and Oakdale and the surrounding area for you guys, dairymen, old school money, old school farmers, like those people are the ones that, like, if old Billy Joe from out there off of 12 says that these people are the one, people are just going to take his word for it because they know he don't play, right? Yeah. And so the concept of selling a bottle of water, people who sell and make $100,000 a year probably are really good at selling water, because they probably just make 100 where they could have made 150. People who make $200,000 a year are the ones that sell themselves and just happen to also have water bottles. Mm-hmm. So that's the concept. I think that's how I explained it before, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
that was good. Thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you learned just as much as we did on this episode of the Palikari Business Podcast.
Yeah, for more information on our guests, make sure to check out the podcast description on whatever platform you're listening on.
Yeah, and if you'd like to connect with us and continue the discussion, you can always join our Palikari Community Discord and follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Just search for us under the handle @Odyssey Productions Co. for new podcast clips in your feed every week.
Until then, we'll see you next time.